Hello everyone, this is Defense Politics Asia, and this is the summary for the day of 537 for the 14th of August. So needless to say, press the subscribe button, press the like button, and we start off with Kupyansk. At the Kupyansk Front, this is Kupyansk, and the Kupyansk Front, the Russian forces continue their fight. And this time around, they have some progress over at the Synkivka region, and over at this eastern part of Synkivka, the Russian forces managed to have some breakthrough, and they managed to have fire control over this junction. And information coming from multiple sources of like Surya Maps, Ryba, Remlin, and pro-Russian sources and neutral sources. And fighting is also continuing at Vyshana, and they are slowly progressing towards Petropavlivka. Petropavlivka currently will not be able to be accessed via this road because of the fire control over here. The Ukrainian forces will have to go through a more complicated country roads rather than this major road that is going through all the way south. But still can use, no problem. There is also fighting reported at Peshov-Travneve. The Russian Defense Ministry reported the Ukrainian counterattack at Peshov-Travneve. That we did not have the Russians being reported to be attacking. We only have the Ukrainians being reported as the one attacking. Russian seems to be focusing on this sector along Liman Pershi Vyshana. But most likely the Russians are also pushing at Peshov-Travneve based on the trends. And we have nothing over at this area here. The last reports of this fighting around the Ivanivka, Kotelivka region is from the 11th to 12th of August. So that's all from the Kupyansk Front. And moving on to the Svatove Front. This is the Svatove Front. In the northern flank of the Svatove Front, Svatove is here. There is no fighting being reported at Novosilka. The last fighting is reported on the 11th and the 12th. Over at the Avdiivka region, also nothing 13th. Synkivka is 12th. And however, we have fighting reported at Novosilka. According to the pro-Ukrainian source Myroshnikov, they reported that the Ukrainians have some expansion of the zone of control, but Myroshnikov do not show mapping, so we do not know what does he supposed to mean. But he says that the Russians are currently counter-attacking to try to take back lost positions. So that's that. Moving on to the Kreminna Front. At the Kreminna Front, we have let's see, no reports. Okay, we have reports of Ukrainian attacking at Serebryansky forestry, and also at Dibrova and also at Torske. So currently the Ukrainian forces are still continuing their offensive around this region here. Reports coming mostly from the Russian Defense Ministry. Nothing on top in the north. Yep. So moving into the Siversk Front. This is Siversk. At the Siversk Front, we have some updates. The Russian forces managed to improve their control around below Horivka, sorry. And previously the front line is actually more or less around here, and now the Russian forces actually have managed to push closer to the town itself and managed to recapture this industrial area. This is called the filter station. So previously we have even videos of Ukrainians at this position firing an RPG in this direction. So now the Russians have retaken this position. So definitely fighting is happening around this area that was totally not reported. The report, however, come out from Russian Defense Ministry after a long time. There's no report about fighting over here. The Russian Defense Ministry said that the Ukrainians attacked, and that's all we know. Further south, I don't think there's anything over here. 13, 12. Okay, so that's all from the Siversk Front. Only the Velyka region. Moving into the Bakhmut Front. At the Bakhmut Front, I don't remember seeing fighting in the north. Yep, there's no fighting in the north. And then the main thing happening is mainly the southern flank of Bakhmut. Bakhmut Front. There is fighting reported at Klishchiivka. According to Deep State UA, the Russians attacked to try to capture positions near Klishchiivka, but so-called failed. And however, Ryba reported in the southeastern part of Klishchiivka, the Russians have launched some counter-attack and managed to capture grounds. And based on preliminary reports, they say that the Ukrainians have been pushed out of Klishchiivka again, according to this pro-Russian source. So the Russians are attacking in this area here. And yeah, so we have also fighting reported at Avdiivka. This is also reported by Deep State UA as per the same report up on top. And of course, is it in the south or through Avdiivka? We are not sure. There is no fighting reported further south of that, and that's all from the Bakhmut Front. And if you notice, there might be some difference. It's because I have changed the methodology of the mapping. I have go back to the old style of mapping, so there will be no more gray out icons. This is to speed up the mapping because viewership nowadays has been too low, and I cannot afford to spend as much time as before mapping in such granular details. Because if I'm mapping at such granular details and yet I'm not getting the views, means nobody really cares about the level of detail in terms of the mapping, or at least not enough people care about it, and that doesn't make it that means that it's not financially viable to actually invest this much resources into it. And it's better for me to spend the resources to report on other news that you might be interested in. For example, the things that are happening in Niger, in the Africa region, and perhaps about BRICS, about the geopolitics around Ukraine war. So yeah, this actually speeds up the mapping by quite a lot when I go back to the old style of mapping. So I hope this will be a positive change. And I'm moving into the Avdiivka Front. At the Avdiivka Front, we have, let me check, fighting reported across Novosilka. According to the Russian Defense Ministry, they also mentioned Vudian over here, just off the airport at Donetsk. This attack is unclear where the attack come from which direction. There is also reports of fighting at Novosilka as usual. So in the Avdiivka region, we have attack in these directions, and this continuous thing that has been happening over the past few days. Moving into the lower part of the Donetsk Front, we have fighting reported across Novosilka. According to the Ukrainian Defense Ministry, they said that the Russians are attacking there as well as at Marinka. So they are trading blows, as you can tell. The Ukrainians are trading the blows on top, and then this one is further south. And we have there's no continuation of the fighting at Mykolaiv. So that's it from the Donetsk Front. Moving into the Velyka Novosilka sector of the Zaporizhzhia offensive by the Ukrainians have launched attack towards Kreminna. This is reported by Myro Shinikov, a pro-Ukrainian source, saying that the Ukrainians managed to make some progress. And on top of that, there is more progress for the Ukrainians. At ROBOTYNE itself, we have news from Surya Maps, a neutral source, reporting that the Russians have withdrawn from the town itself of ROBOTYNE. So the Russian forces have withdrawn to probably Zavidne Baziania. This is because the Ukrainians have bombarded the southern part very, very heavily, which the Russians are unable to hold the remaining part. And based on certain video footages, including the one that the Russians while they are walking around along this road, they got shelled by the Ukrainians. These are all signs, and also there's another BMP that got destroyed at this position. These are all signs that the Russians are still attacking. However, they are struggling to have a strong foothold anymore within the town. And the Deep State UA also clarified that the video, after they have made some clarification, is not Russians fleeing from ROBOTYNE, but it was a reverse. It was actually the Russians trying to move to ROBOTYNE to join in the attack or defense of Uruzhaine, but then they got spotted and then got bombarded, and then they turned around and run. So this is clarification from the pro-Ukrainian source about that video, that everybody is so irritatingly, telling me that that is a sign or evidence of Russians, fleeing Uruzhaine, which is not. Basically, what Deep State UA have said is pretty much what I said. Basically, that this is just an ongoing Russian operation, and most likely even from this report, it does shows that there might be a case where the Russians are still within Uruzhaine. Maybe not much grounds that they're holding, but it is talking about the Russians are trying to send forces in to regain control of Uruzhaine. That's actually what they are trying to say. So yeah, that's what it is. Uruzhaine is not reported by Russian Defense Ministry to be in such a bad shape. They still continue to report that they are attacking the Ukrainian forces. Even Ryba has not exactly fully mentioned about any withdrawal. The only reports of a withdrawal come from Surya Maps. Not even the Deep State UA talk about it. So I just want to highlight that only Surya Maps have mentioned this. So among the trusted source, no one exactly say that the Russians are withdrawing from Uruzhaine except Surya Maps. There is fighting reported at Staromayorsky, according to the Russian Defense Ministry. They're talking about active actions by the Russian forces to hit Ukrainian positions, and there is also Russians attacking Ukrainian positions in the western part of Staromayorsky. So the Russians are still making some push. Doesn't feel like a big push, but small push, taking out Ukrainian observation positions. So that's about it from Staromayorsky region. There's nothing over at Priotny, and that's all from the Velyka Novosilka sector of the Zaporizhzhia Front. And at Hulyaipole sector, this is Hulyaipole. At Hulyaipole sector, we have fighting reported north of Dorozyanka. Deep State UA reported that fighting started again in the northern part of Dorozyanka, and I believe this is likely to be a Ukrainian attack, because the Ukrainians can do it. They have the manpower to continue to launch more attacks. But that's all we know. At the Orikhiv sector, this is where ROBOTYNE is, where the Ukrainians are making salients into the Russian first line of defense. We have reports of fighting at ROBOTYNE, and in fact, based on mappings and the way how the pro-Ukrainian side talk about their fighting, it seems to be that the Ukrainian forces have managed to enter ROBOTYNE, mainly in the northern part, because they mentioned about fighting continues in ROBOTYNE, and Myro Shinikov, the other pro-Ukrainian source, also reported the same thing. But they both emphasized that ROBOTYNE has not been captured. The fighting also was reported generally at ROBOTYNE by the Russian Defense Ministry. Deep State UA also previously mentioned about this. Ryba also reported about this. However, the pro-Russian sources did not mention about Ukrainian forces entering the village at all. So the way how they put it is still that the Ukrainian forces are fighting near ROBOTYNE, but they did not manage to have much success. However, in the latest Ryba's pro-Russian source report, they say that the Ukrainian forces are changing their tactics and trying to bypass ROBOTYNE from both sides, east and the west. And maybe they are talking about fighting around it and trying to push down in this way. But there is no real information about an attack in this area here. Mainly the attack is coming from the eastern part of ROBOTYNE. So I'm not exactly sure what they say based on their video. The Ryba's video, the front line looks a bit like this, and they say that the Ukrainian forces attack in this area, which, very vague. Ryba's video is super vague, and there is no more fighting reported along this eastern part of ROBOTYNE. The fighting reported, there's also fighting reported towards Kopani. This is part of the same report about the Dodozianka earlier just now we have mentioned. And the town name, they call it Kopaniv, but most likely it's actually Kompany. And maybe there's a typo, and the Ukrainians probably are attacking towards this direction. I wonder if this is what they call by, you know, trying to put ROBOTYNE into a semicircle. It doesn't feel like it, unless they are saying that the attack comes in this direction. Also doesn't make a lot of sense. So anyway, that is what it is. We shall continue to monitor, and hopefully we have more mapping from all these major sources that are able to tell us what exactly the front line is happening. There's nothing over at the Kupyansk sector. However, there is some information that I read that from pro-Russian sources, I believe, that the Ukrainian forces has sent troops into Pyatikaki again. So maybe we shall expect some kind of attack or fighting near Pyatikaki again, or it could be just a rotational force. That means they are just rotating the people that are supposed to guard the town. So that's all from Kupyansk sector of the Zaporizhzhia front. And moving into the Kherson Front, at the Kherson Front, we have no reports of fighting around this area here. The Ukrainian forces continue to hold positions at Kozachi Lahiri on the western part, and as well as at Dachi, just off the Antonovsky Bridge. So the Ukrainians continue to make a nuisance against the Russians along the entire front line of Kherson, all along the river, and we shall see how this goes. Otherwise, there's no other reports, and some conclusions. The Ukrainian forces is really having good progress. I'm not saying this because, you know, I'm trying to, you know, pander to pro-Ukrainian views. I can tell you for a fact, most of my viewers are pro-Russian or neutral or pro-Russian. So, you know, putting headlines that of Ukrainians doing well doesn't do well for my videos, and it's very clear from the data. Every time I wrote a big headline that Ukraine is doing well, the view is actually lesser. So I'm just telling you guys for a fact that the Ukrainians are actually making very good progress in multiple areas, largely mainly around the Zaporizhzhia, the Donetsk region, and lesser so over the Bakhmut nowadays. Previously was doing okay, but not so much. Now the Ukrainians are making very good progress over at the Velyka Novosilka sector, as they seem to is going to fully capture Uruzhaine. They have not fully captured Uruzhaine. I just have to emphasize again and again. Don't cope. It is the reality that the most southern part of Uruzhaine is not yet secure. So because the Russians are still making offensive actions, they are still attacking. So but I believe very, very soon, in a few days time at most, Ukraine is likely to fully capture Uruzhaine. We're likely to see an announcement from the Ukrainian Defense Ministry talking about it, and that will be very good for the Ukrainian forces, because this will allow them to connect, to have this road to go past and swap forces between the two sides of the Mokryali River, and that will increase their operational efficiency. And we have this push towards Kreminna, very normal. As I mentioned about this, the Ukrainians will do this kind of thing around this area here. And the ROBOTYNE situation is also looking quite bad, because if the Ukrainians are actually entering into the town, it's likely that they will be able to do this rolling attack. This is my term, rolling attacks, in the sense that they have one force attack for a few maybe 6 hours, then they will rotate, another force will continue the attack. And it seems to be the case, because there is already reported information about how one force attack, then they were taken over by another force to continue the attack. And if the Russians are not adapting by having a higher intensity of rotation, they are not going to hold this town. Ukraine is going to capture it, and the Ukrainians are also expanding their zone of control around the eastern part of ROBOTYNE, heading towards Verbove. However, this area is going to be really difficult, because this is actually part of the long entrenchments, the part of the first line of defense, but the one that is very, very long. So this is going to be extremely challenging. As you can see, is this entire area. This is a massive first line of defense by the Russians. So this Verbove region is going to be quite difficult for the Ukrainians, I believe. But we shall see how this goes. The current tactics are really working very, very well for the Ukrainians. Their rotation, even when they are not attacking, is twice a day. So that is actually extremely intense. However, when we go all the way, to the other side of the Ukraine war, things looks to be different. The Russians are actually the one making progress. The Russians are counter-attacking over at the Bakhmut region. The entire northern flank is secured. The Russians have secured it. The Ukrainians can't do much. In the southern part, the Russians are actually, counter-attacking to try to re-secure all these towns. Tentatively, the Ukrainians are putting up a good fight. So, the Russians have a lot of progress. And then we go all the way up. There's nothing really much happening over this area here. It's just skirmishes along the Svatove Front as the Russians are consolidating their lines. The other one is actually the Kupyansk offensive by the Russians, and it's making good progress. The true objective, I'm not sure. I'm not sure how far the Russians are going to go, because this offensive is already starting to become abnormal, because the Russians always give up after 1 week of fighting, and we have already passed 1 week of fighting over at Kupyansk Front. So I'm not sure what the Russians are planning. Are they going to go all the way for Petropavlovka? I have no idea. So this is looking really unusual for the Russians. Let's watch and see what the Russians are going to do. Maybe this is just a precursor to another very, very good will by the Russians and give up the entire Luhansk to Ukraine. Who knows, man? So anyway, thank you for watching. Press the like button, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next update.